Today, we are talking about being bloated. I don't know about you, but I don't think there is anything worse than that feeling when your gut is just completely distended. And I don't know about you, but I'm sometimes amazed at how big and round the belly can be, almost like I'm pregnant sometimes. Do you feel me? Well, lately I've had a lot of clients say to me, well, I'm bloated all the time. That's just normal for me. And I realize that so many people are in that position where you think that being bloated is normal for you. But I want you to understand that being bloated is actually your body's way of saying, hello, red flag, something is wrong here. And so I wanted to talk about that today and explain to you how you can figure out what is causing your bloating and how to fix it. Because again, nobody wants to be bloated, right? So let's get down to it and figure out what is happening to you to make sure that you can fix this problem and that your gut will then be much more healthy and you're gonna feel so much better. So let's get right in. Number one, what is bloating? Bloating is that distended, tight, uncomfortable, swollen feeling in your abdomen. It's often accompanied by gas, distension, or even pain. Some people feel bloating after they eat certain foods. Others experience it chronically, like even after a stressful event. So lots of different things can cause that bloating, but I think we all know exactly what it feels like. But why does it happen? Well, bloating has to do with a gas buildup or even water retention in your gut. And so that's the basic premise of what's going on inside. It's usually gas or water retention that gives you that distended feeling. Now, there's so many reasons that you might have chronic bloating. And the first reason is pretty basic, and most people know it. It's something that you're eating, right? So let's talk about different foods and what it might be that you're eating in particular that might be the problem. I would say the number one thing that people get distension and bloating from is definitely dairy. Not everybody, but some people, a lot of people actually, are in some way intolerant to lactose in dairy. So we're talking about your cheese, your milk, your yogurt. When you eat those things, you might notice that an hour later, you've got that swollen belly. And so you might be a little bit lactose intolerant. Now, the good thing is, if you are lactose intolerant, you could get some dairy that's lactose free. So I know for me, I'm a little bit lactose intolerant. When it comes to things like milk definitely makes me feel super bloated. And so if I get a lactose free milk, not a problem, it really doesn't impact me then. So that's a great option, and it's not an unhealthy version just to get a lactose-free milk. I might also add that whenever I go to Starbucks, which is very rarely, because I personally just think it's a lot of money, and waste of calories, never worth it. But often when I go to Starbucks, if I get any kind of milk coffee drink, say a cappuccino or a latte, I get completely distended and completely bloated because they don't have a lactose-free option. They do have oat milk, and sometimes I will opt for that because it's just not worth being bloated, right? So it's a good thing to note if you're like, oh, I never really thought about it, but I am always bloated after Starbucks. Maybe you're a little bit lactose intolerant, something to start to look at. Now, another thing that you might be intolerant to when it comes to foods could be some basic things like chia seeds. Wait, chia seeds, you're probably thinking, aren't they super healthy? Well, let me tell you something funny about that. Recently, I made a new recipe that's actually in the Nutrition Bootcamp, and it's got oatmeal and blueberries and chia seeds. And let me tell you, when I started making this recipe and I sort of like changed this, changed that till it was just perfect, I was eating it every day. And for 3 days, I had never been so bloated. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm not someone who normally gets bloated. So what did I eat? I realized, well, that I've been eating the chia seed oatmeal, and that's definitely new for me to put chia seeds in it. And then I looked it up really fast, like, do chia seeds cause bloating? And the big word said yes. Chia seeds actually cause bloating. I couldn't believe it, and I was super bummed because I love this recipe. But all you have to do if you love chia seeds too is back off the amount of chia seeds. So there's a tablespoon of chia seeds in that recipe. I had to back it way down because chia seeds are super high in fiber, and guess what? Sometimes when you go a little too fast with a little too much fiber, you will get that distension. So we're talking about dairy, we're talking about chia seeds. What other kinds of things will cause you to be bloated? Well, really anything that's super high fiber. So think about your beans, your lentils, even broccoli. Now it's funny because I eat tons of broccoli. That doesn't impact me like those chia seeds did. But those things, beans, legumes, broccoli, very high in fiber, that can cause bloating. Now, for some people, if you cook your vegetables that are very high in fiber, that might reduce your chance of having some of that bloating, but you don't want to overcook them because then you're also going to lose some nutrients. So again, one of the ways to handle that is just to back off on the amount. You may be able to ease into a greater amount of fiber over time, but too much, too fast definitely might be a problem. Now, this next one might surprise you, but I'm telling you, this happens to my clients all the time. They tell me I was so bloated yesterday, so I go back and I look at that food log and I see that they had a protein bar or a protein shake. And so then I go right to the label, not because I'm looking at the macros or the calories. I go right to the label of the items that they're eating to look at the ingredients. Now, you might not know this because you might think that all protein powder and protein bars are super healthy, but here is a news flash. Most protein bars and a lot of protein powder have a lot of ingredients in them, and a lot of these ingredients are artificial. Many protein powders and protein bars have things like artificial sweeteners. They might show up on that label as sorbitol or erythritol. Well, guess what? Those ingredients are very bloating. They cause a lot of problems when it comes to digestion. Well, you're gonna get very gassy and very bloated if those two things are on the label of your protein bar or protein shake. So you might want to check that out. Another thing you might want to look at is when you're looking at your protein shake or protein bar, if it has ingredients like this far down and you can't pronounce half of them, a lot of those are just processed ingredients there to increase the shelf life of those items. And they might be causing some bloating too. But I'll tell you right now, things like erythritol, that is going to distend you faster than anything. So take a look at those labels. That's super important. The next thing that causes a lot of my clients a lot of bloating, carbonated drinks. Now you might be thinking, what's wrong with a carbonated drink? I mean, all I drink is a carbonated water. There's no calories in it and it's refreshing. It's just water with a little bit of bubbles, right? That might be true, but the bubbles in those kind of drinks, sparkling waters, all those kind of drinks that are a little bit gassy because they have gas in them will actually make you gassy because they have gas in them. They seem refreshing, but I'm telling you now, a lot of my clients get bloated on the days that they have carbonated drinks. So as much as you love that sparkling water, I'm going to tell you, you might drop it for a week and see if your bloating goes away, because sometimes that's the only thing I have to get my clients to change, and they realize that that was it. Bubbles in the can, bubbles in the gut, sometimes doesn't work for a lot of people. Switch to just flat water, and that's going to resolve the issue. To me, that's totally worth it. Now this next one, I don't want to scare you, but it's possible you have some kind of gut health imbalance. What is that? Well, an overgrowth of bad bacteria in your gut or conditions like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, can result in chronic bloating. Now don't freak out because it's probably not that, but sometimes there is a gut health imbalance. Something to think about once we talk about in a second all the different things you can do to assess if it's a food intolerance. And at the end of the day, if all these foods are not the thing causing it, you might want to seek out a doctor who can help you and figure out if there is in fact any kind of gut health imbalance. The next thing that causes bloating, come on ladies, we all know that time of the month, right? Hormones can definitely cause an imbalance in our system. And when we have an imbalance like that, often right before your period, you're gonna be super bloated. Nobody likes that time of the month. Now, what you might not realize is that even during ovulation, you might in fact feel some bloating. Often my clients see a spike on the scale when they are ovulating, and it's usually more of a water retention bloating versus that gassy feeling in the gut. But it is definitely true that with hormonal shifts during your menstrual cycle, you might see bloating. There's not a lot you can do for that one, let it pass. But during those times, if you are someone who gets super bloated, I would recommend really watching some of these different foods that also might be contributors, because you don't want to double dose with the chia seeds and getting your period, if you know what I mean. So be very cautious of that during that time of the month. All right, so those are a lot of foods and different things that might be causing you to have bloating. But what can you do about it? Well, there's a few different things that you can try. And the first thing that I recommend is you track your food for 1 week. You're not just tracking it. I don't want you to track it in a food log. It has nothing to do with calories or macros. I honestly would just journal out what you eat for breakfast, snack, lunch, dinner. I would sort of put a timestamp on what you eat and when you eat it. And then I would note on that same page or the next day when and if you have bloating. Now, just tracking your food and your bloating symptoms can be an immediate way to figure out what is causing the situation. I do this with my clients all the time, and I usually help them figure out what was the culprit that was causing it. It's usually some kind of dairy, or like I said, too many vegetables too fast, too many beans, anything like that, or maybe it was that protein bar. So tracking food with symptoms for 1 week can be a great way to start assessing if it's a particular food that's causing your bloating. The second thing is elimination diets. So I personally like to eliminate one thing at a time. There's other elimination type diets where you eliminate everything for 30 days and then you slowly add them back in. Personally, for me, that's a little overwhelming. So I usually do a food chart with the logging of the food with my symptoms, see how that goes. Then if you can sort of see 1 or 2 things that happened the day before you got bloated or hours before you got bloated, I would start with 1 or 2 things to remove from your diet from anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. So really giving it some time. Eliminating 1 or 2 things at a time makes it a lot easier than eliminating 4 to 6 things, because then you don't know which of those things it was that was causing the bloating until you slowly add them back in. So personally, 1 to 2 things max, but an elimination diet is also a great way to see if that was working for you. Unfortunately, eliminating it for 1 day, 2 days might not be enough to really see what's going on, but pick 1 or 2 things, take it out of your diet, maybe continue that food journal with symptoms and see, is there less bloating when I take away these items? That's going to really help you assess if they were causing it or not. The third thing that you can actively do if you're someone who gets bloated all the time, maybe it's not due to any food intolerance. Guess what? Did you know that eating too fast actually causes bloating? Well, it does. When you eat too fast, you might not realize it, but you're swallowing a lot of air. And when you swallow a lot of air, that often contributes to bloating. So I want you to practice mindful eating. That means not in front of the television, not in front of the computer. Please don't be eating in the car. Mindful eating where you slow down. I really think that being present with your food helps you slow down, helps you taste your food, helps you know when you're full or when you're not. So be present, slow down, and that also might help with your bloating. The fourth thing that you can do is make sure that you're staying hydrated. Seems kind of counterintuitive. You're gonna drink more water to feel less bloated. Wouldn't that give you more bloating? You'd think so, right? But actually being dehydrated can sometimes lead to bloating. So make sure you're staying on top of that water hydration, not sparkling water, right? Water, regular flat tap water, whatever the water is you drink that does not have bubbles in it, make sure you're staying hydrated. How do you know if you're hydrated? I basically do the pee test, which basically look at your urine when you go to the bathroom. If it is sort of a light lemonade color, you're hydrated. If it's clear, you might be overhydrated, and you don't want that either. If it's dark yellow, it means you are not hydrated enough. So give your urine a check. Make sure that you're hydrating enough, because it's a simple fix that also will help your bloating. The fifth thing that you can do for bloating is you might want to start incorporating some gut healthy foods. Things like kimchi, yogurt, sauerkraut. These are really great foods for promoting good gut bacteria. So I would be cautious not to eat too much of these too fast, not to mention they can be a little bit high in sodium, but these are very gut friendly. So incorporating some of these foods is a great way to also help your gut health. And the sixth thing that you can do is be a little cautious when you start a new health journey or health kick. Even one of my programs, I'm always encouraging, get your fiber in, increase those vegetables, but sometimes you have to ease in. If you're someone who has not had a lot of fiber in your diet, you typically don't eat vegetables and fruit, then if you go gung-ho all at once, you're probably gonna be pretty bloated. So always remember that if you haven't been eating a lot of fiber, ease back in, especially with those cruciferous vegetables. You know, that broccoli that I talk about can be a lot all at once for some people. Some people, no problem at all. Like me, never had a problem with broccoli, but other people, they'll be doubled over. So just remember, always ease in if you're headed back into that health journey. And number 7, if all else fails and you've been really struggling with bloating for a long time, I would seek out some kind of professional care, see a doctor, explain to them what's going on. They might want to run a few tests just to make sure that everything is okay. Because remember, bloating is not normal, and the goal is to take care of it as quickly as you can, because again, it's super uncomfortable. No one wants to feel that way, but more than anything, I'm a huge believer in listening to your body, and this is a red flag that something isn't working, whether it's in your diet or too much stress in your life. Whatever is causing this bloating, we definitely want to figure it out. Now, I have put together a huge list of all foods that might be the reason that you have bloating. Too many to actually list right now. I'm just gonna put it in a simple PDF for you. I will put the link below if you'd like to download it. I would just check all the different foods, because some, like the chia seeds, sometimes might surprise you. And maybe you're like, I'm not allergic to dairy. I already know I don't have an intolerance to lactose. But maybe there's some other things on this list that you go, oh, really? I never thought of that, and I eat that every day. So I'm gonna put a link to this list of other foods that might create some kind of bloating. And again, it's always just good to know so that you can figure it out. Thank you so much for listening and watching today. Hey, if you are on YouTube, you're watching this as a video, do me a favor, a like and a comment below to let me know, hey, is this working for you? Do you want some other topic in particular? Because whenever someone emails me or lists in the comments what they're looking for, that's the next video that I will basically do, or podcast. So you can also get today's video as a podcast. Just search the Earn That Body podcast in all podcast players. Thanks so much, and don't forget to subscribe. Have an amazing day, stay healthy, and stay not bloated.